Welcome to Overcoming RevOps Challenges, the series where we break down the solutions to real-world revenue operations problems, brought to you by the Revenue Operations Alliance. Today we're joined by Alysson Pehoski, Director of Revenue Operations at Field Nation. Welcome, Alysson.
Thank you for having me.
Right, so to start us off, could you just introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about your career so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Alysson Pehoski. I'm Director of Revenue Operations at Field Nation. I have been working in sales or revenue operations for the last 12 years of my career. Throughout the 12 years of my career, I've had the opportunity to basically build an ops function at different technology companies time and time again, which has been really rewarding. Over the last 4 years, I joined Field Nation at the end of 2019 and had the opportunity. I was a sales operations specialist. We had a team of two. And over the last 4 years, we've really scaled our team from a very tactical sales operations team of two to a very dynamic, powerhouse, strategic revenue operations team of nine, which is a huge accomplishment and something I'm very proud of. And we did that even during the scary throes of COVID and lockdown, and learned how to navigate and continue to grow and support the organization even during those challenging times.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had a great career so far. So today we're talking about sort of balancing automation and that control when you're trying to drive some efficiency in your RevOps strategy. Could you tell us a little bit more about how that was a challenge for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the exciting things and one of the great accomplishments and big wins that you can have in a revenue operations type role is where when you can find those points of efficiency. And it's kind of nice to automate myself out of a portion of my job, which sounds a little bit weird. But I have found when I can lean on technology to take over a portion of my job, so that I don't have to do it anymore, that really frees up my time to start thinking strategic and think about, what other areas can we work on, and maybe work on things that are a little bit more fun than chasing down contracts and managing contract signatures manually and managing our renewal process manually. Um, when one challenge and one point of caution that I have learned throughout my career around automating and finding that right balance is, yes, automation is amazing and it creates a ton of efficiency and it does free up your time to work on things that are maybe a little bit more enjoyable and fun. However, you need to find that right balance so that you don't fully remove yourself from a process. I think it's really important to be able, along with defining automation and rolling out these efficiencies, it's also really important to understand what your role still is in that process. You can't completely step away, because when you step away, then things can go off the rails and chances are, if something breaks or doesn't work as expected and you find it later, then you get a huge mess on your hands. We've had that experience. Everybody has, things that we learn from, right? And so we had that experience at Field Nation. And luckily we caught it early enough where, we were able to not impact our buyer's experience. But in 2020, we rolled out a contract process. And it was the first time at Field Nation where we actually rolled out the idea of contracts to our buyers. So we had, and all of our contracts were evergreen, so they auto renewed. And so during that year, it was really important for us to think about, what does a renewal process look like? How do we stand up a renewal process in this brand new structure, this brand new go-to-market strategy? And so we stood up a renewal process, and as the team continued to sell to new customers, the quantity of our contracts continued to grow, which meant every day we would have more renewals that we would need to deal with in a year. When we were initially thinking about what this process would look like, the thought was I would be working with our customer success team or with whatever team would be doing these renewals and making sure that these renewals were going through within the system. That would have taken a ton of my time. It would have been very time consuming, and it would take me away from my manager responsibilities and, thinking more strategically for the team. So instead, we stood up a process that every time a new customer opportunity closed, it would auto spawn a renewal opportunity. And then if that renewal opportunity wasn't touched, that renewal opportunity would automatically close, meaning that they would auto renew. And that worked fine until we started introducing some exceptions. And exceptions can be a real killer when it comes to a process. There were buyers who didn't want to do an auto renew. They wanted to remove that language out of the contract. There were buyers who wanted to renew, but they wanted to make sure their terms were different when they hit their renewal date. There were customers who wanted in their contract to say, I want you to reach out to me 30 days before the renewal date so that we can negotiate this. And if we don't come to an agreement, then we'll auto renew. So that you start introducing these new scenarios that we didn't account for in the renewal process. And so the challenge that we could have run into with this is if we had just let it auto renew and let the system run as we had originally stood it up, we would have missed all of these and we would have been out of compliance with our contracts. And so, and we, that was a problem that we ran into. We realized we needed to get back into the process, stand up some kind of check-in, some kind of visibility into these contracts, create some way for us to see if it's a non-standard renewal contract, and then get the team around this so that they knew what kind of conversations they needed to have with the customer. So that's an example of a really important part of the sales cycle and a really important part of what revenue operations supports, where we needed to find that right balance between automation and also intervention and making sure that we were not just fully removing ourselves from the process, but actually stepping in and catching things before it became a problem. Another example where we use automation and technology to really drive efficiency and create more time for the RevOps team in a way that went really, really well was our contract process. So keep in mind, or remember, back in 2019, early 2020, shortly after I started, we were introducing this brand new go-to-market strategy for our sales team. We were introducing contracts for the very first time. When we first rolled it out, it was super manual. So and it was all on me. I was creating contracts manually. I was chasing down opportunity approvals. I was making sure that things got signed and came back and were sent to the right department so they could execute on these contracts. It took up all of my time, and my turnaround time for these contracts was 24 hours. And we know salespeople, we love salespeople, but we also know 24 hours is a long time to wait for a contract to get to the customer because time kills deals. And so I was spending really all of my time doing this. This was compounded by the fact that COVID happened and it caused us to go into a lockdown. Also, personally, I was pregnant. So I was about to have a baby. We went into lockdown and we were still doing this process manually. And I was the only one who was doing this process. So when I went on maternity leave, I knew this was going to cause a big problem because it was all funneling to me. This manual work that was really important within the process was funneling to me. So what we needed to do is we needed to find a way to auto-generate these contracts, to send them for signature, electronically, and to really manage this process in a way that did not rely on me to move it forward, and also give the sales team more autonomy and reduce our potential for human errors within these contracts. So what we did was we researched and found a tool that would help us with this. We brought on Conga to help auto-generate our contracts, to send them for signature. We baked Conga into our sales cycle so that it helped manage our approval process as well. And so the benefit of this was we were able to decrease that turnaround time from 24 hours to however long it takes for sales rep to do a couple of clicks to generate that contract and send it out. We decreased our human errors because I wasn't manually creating these anymore. We were able to just allow the system to do it. We created more control around the pricing and the discounts that were going out and any redlining on our terms. And also, it allowed the sales rep to really own their journey. It allowed them to really have more ownership in their day. And we rolled it out 1 week before I went into labor. So it was an example where it was good that I automated myself out of a job because I wasn't going to be able to be there to do that job while I was on maternity leave. We still use this process today. It works awesome. It's one of, if I ask any of our sales team, it's one of their favorite areas that we've created efficiency for them and also efficiency for us. And then when I came back from maternity leave, I now had this whole portion of my job that wasn't really needing me as much. I still checked in to make sure contracts were, that the system was working well and that, the fields were mapping correctly onto the sales order. But I then had the mental space and time to start thinking more strategically and start thinking about fun things like, how do we scale the operations team? How do we move from sales ops to rev ops? What does our 3-year plan look like? How else can we support the organization? So that was a really great example of like leveraging technology, leveraging automation, finding that right balance of what kind of involvement and intervention do I need to still maintain to make sure that this is working well, but also giving me the space to start working on other things to scale the team.
Yeah, it sounds like, automation could be really handy in terms of saving time and getting on with that more strategic work that most RevOps people are looking to get on with. But, you've got to be a bit careful and make sure that it's not going wrong in some ways. What advice would you give to someone who's, looking to find that balance between automation and everything going out of control?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I the first thing I would recommend is make sure that you're automating the right things. And I think in order to know what you should be automating, you have to really get in and understand your process to identify where are the areas of like the greatest pain points and greatest potential for benefit from the company. I would also say automate with caution. And in addition to automating where it makes sense. So as you are automating parts of your process, if you need a tool to help you with it, take the time to find the right tool and take the time and investment to make sure that it's being integrated and configured correctly. Any corners cut during the configuration piece or the implementation piece will cause creates risk to cause so many issues down the line. And so I think it's really important to go slow in the beginning so that you can go faster in the long run. My other tip and recommendation is don't just stand something up and trust that it's working great. I greatly recommend that as you are building out automation, whether it's bringing on a tool or using Salesforce flows, or whatever that looks like, at the same time, start creating a plan for once it's up and running. What's your check-in plan? How do you continue to monitor it, especially in the beginning? Your monitoring plan in the first 3 months should be pretty heavy just to make sure that it's working well. And then you can scale back, but have a plan. If you have a plan, then you have something you can execute and it takes away like that decision fatigue once it's up and running. And then my last thing is don't be afraid to go back in and update. As the company changes, as strategy changes, as sales techniques change, whatever you built in terms of automation will likely also need to change. So I think it's important, especially really in anything that we do as revenue operations professionals, it's really important to just check in on the work that you've done and make sure that things are running like you anticipated.
Yeah, I love that tip in terms of, going back out and checking it's still working, checking it doesn't need an update, checking that it still fits its purpose. I think that's some great advice for managing automation. Well, thanks so much for being on, Alison. It's been a great discussion about automation.
Yes, you're so welcome.
Thanks for watching Overcoming RevOps Challenges. If you want to keep uncovering more revenue operations knowledge from the experts, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on so you never miss a new upload. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'll see you in the next video, where we dive deeper into the world of revenue operations.